What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today we are kicking off a new series called Resculpted. In this series, we'll take a scene, image, or product and recreate it within Cinema 4D and Redshift. Some recreations will be very similar, while others will fall short, but the goal is to see exactly how close we can get it. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today. So without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so for episode 1, we are doing this tropical living room here. What I like about this piece is just how much natural light is coming in through both of these windows here, and then you can kind of see the light cast in from the right side of this piece here. And so what I thought was really cool is it's very simplistic. It has a lot of just natural or even neutral tones here. And then we have this really cool centerpiece, which is this painting here. And then we have this plant here on the left, and then this cool looking lamp over to the top right here. And so I thought this was pretty nice because it showed a sense of balance here. And then of course, with all the lighting and all the natural tones, it's very nice overall. And so for our first episode here, we're going to try and recreate this here. So for this series, the goal is to try and recreate this all in one shot. Here at the end of the video, what we'll do is just kind of do a wrap-up portion where we'll look at some of the renders that we got from this, and then kind of talk about what we did well, and then also some opportunities as well as where we kind of fell short. So let's hop into Cinema 4D and get started. All right, so first things first, in this we have to establish a boundary. So I'm just going to bring in a curve just to kind of create a boundary for our scene here. And then what I'll do is grab a Redshift camera. I'm going to bring in just a simple cube here to kind of take place for this wall that we had in our reference here. And then what I'm going to do is just bring up the Redshift render view and put this into our camera perspective. And now I'm just going to take our cube here and move it slightly to the left here and bring this up just about there. So that will be good for right now. Next up, I'm going to copy and paste our cube and shrink this down. If you can see in the reference, there is, it looks like some metal finishings off of this wall here. And so I'm just recreating that here quickly. And so I'll just copy and paste that and put this on the other side as well. And so that will kind of be our foundational piece, which kind of anchors the piece down a little bit. And so making sure that we get this right is going to kind of help the entirety of the piece to make sure that we are getting the correct perspective and kind of setting up what this is going to look like correctly. So next up, I'm going to make the border of this window sill here. And so I'm just going to copy and paste our cube that we had and just shrink this down. And then I'll just bring this down to the floor. And then this will be essentially that foundational beam at the bottom of our floor here. And then I'm just going to kind of adjust it to about there. Yeah, that looks about right. So we'll just kind of keep that as is. And then we can kind of always adjust that. To make things easy, I'm just going to copy and paste and rotate this. These will actually be the beams that support this window here. And so we'll just copy and paste these a few times and kind of recreate this look here. And then I'm just going to kind of thicken that a little bit here. And then move this down. And then if we can see in the reference as well, this is probably around the middle range when it comes to how tall it is within this picture here. And so I think here is just about right. But again, like I said, we can always go in and readjust it later. We're just kind of getting the foundational pieces set, and then we can always readjust our camera or a lot of these actors within the scene. So, and then if you look closely to a lot of these beams here, it looks like there's a foundational beam, and then you do have an additional beam kind of sticking out here. And so we're just recreating that by copy and pasting our beams here and then just shrinking it down in size a bit. And then I'll bring this forward just a little bit. And then I'll just copy and paste these two and bring this to the back. Just because in this piece, you could see the last beam in the background there. And so that is that here. We'll probably have to push this forward, but we'll just kind of leave this as is. Next up, I'm going to make the floor, so I'm just going to bring in a cube and shrink this down. And then just move it in front here. And then let me hop into our Redshift camera, and I'm just going to change the perspective and exactly where this is. And so again, I'm just trying to line this up to our scene here. I'm actually going to kind of kick back this perspective to 45. I'm going to increase the size of this floor here and then just move this camera slightly. Let's see what 64 is like. Cool. And that looks pretty good because we have that beam somewhat still centered within the perspective here. And then we do have our floor and our kind of that focal wall here set up appropriately with some space off to the right for the windows and where the lamp is. And so actually, I'll just kind of slide this over to the left a little bit, just because that wall is a little bit closer to those beams there. So I'm just trying to make sure that this is right here. Cool. And now I'm just going to copy and paste our floor here just to recreate the ceiling here real quick. And if you see in the reference, you can kind of see the ceiling. And so I'm just trying to kind of recreate that here slightly. So you see it both throughout the back windows on the left. And then of course you see it on the right side as well. And it's kind of at a curved angle. So we're just going to do that as well. Just bring this down. And then we rotated it a little bit just to kind of get that curve look. Now, as I turn off the S curve, that is essentially what we're working with. And so we can kind of see a little bit more where the dark pieces here are going to be more of the windows, and we'll use some sort of lights to kind of recreate some sort of outside atmosphere here. And then if you look at the image, we do have this, looks like this metal beam that is going across this roof area. And so I'm just going to copy and paste this cube here and just bring that down. Next up, I'm going to bring in a cylinder, shrink this down. This is just going to be the cable that is coming down for this light here. And so and then I'm going to bring in a sphere, shrink this down a bit, bring this over. And really, I'm just going to line this up to where this cable is. And really with this spot, you guys, we're just getting the general idea of a lot of these shapes. And so think of this almost as a rough draft here of kind of getting all of the characters in the right place, and then we can kind of enhance it going forward. So all right, so next up, I'm going to bring in a rug here. So I'm just going to copy and paste our floor, shrink this down, and kind of move this off to the side. And I'm just trying to adjust it here. It is a little hard to see, but it goes right about here, I believe. But that will probably be good for right now until we get everything else situated. But next up, what I'm going to do is just bring in a cube, shrink this down. And this is going to be the wood beam that is supporting this couch here. And so I'm just trying to kind of get this into the right place. I'm going to copy and paste it here, move this to the left. And then copy and paste again. And this one is about, it's not even centered, it's like off to the right here slightly. So we'll just put that there. We're going to copy and paste, stretch this out here. And then this is just going to be the wood portion here. And I'm trying to just adjust this to the scene. Cool, so that looks good so far. It is a little high, so we'll probably tweak it a little bit later, but we'll just kind of keep rolling here. Next up, I'm going to bring in a cylinder. I'm just going to kind of shrink this down and kind of bring it to the front. And then I'm just going to bring these back just a little bit, just because there is quite a bit of room in the foreground. And so I'm just going to readjust some of these here. And then just widen this a little bit. Cool, so with looking at this and looking at our reference, we're doing a pretty good job with doing the general outline of what this is looking like. Next up, I'm going to copy and paste, and with this, I'm going to make essentially the outline for our picture frame here. And so I'm just going to shrink this down. Again, copy and paste. This is for this other side here. And then copy and paste, rotate this, and put this at the top. Copy and paste again, bring this down. Now for the cushion portion, I'm just going to copy and paste what we had here, bring this up a little bit, adjust the size, hit fillet here. So we have a nice rounded edge here. And then I'm just going to somewhat adjust it here. What we'll do now is just bring in a bulge deformer and throw this on top of the couch here, fit the parents. And then I'll just kind of play around with the strength here until we get a nice sort of rounded look to this. And this is fine here, so we'll just kind of leave that as is, and then we can always go back into it. Next up, I'm just going to copy and paste this here and then shrink this down, and then this will be essentially the arm portions for this couch here. And so I'll just kind of move this off to the left side here. And then same thing, copy and paste, and over on this right side. Cool, so looking pretty good so far. Next, we have to bring in some of these pillows here, and so I'm just going to go into Grayscale Gorilla, grab some of these pillows, and then just adjust it to this couch here. And so I'll just place this at the back, rotate this, and then just kind of adjust this here. And as you see in the reference, these pillows are somewhat leaning back, and so we're just trying to recreate that here by kind of adjusting this here, both the size and then also where it's essentially at on the couch here. Next up, I'll copy and paste for our second one here. And this one is somewhat a little bit more wide versus our other one. And so I'm just going to bring in a squash and stretch and just stretch this out just slightly here. I'm going to copy and paste our pillow again. And then I'll just kind of adjust it here. Give it a quick save and then just reduce down the size a bit, and then really just kind of play with the width of this pillow here. And that's about right there, so we'll keep that one as is. Copy and paste. Now with this one, we do need to rotate it a bit and then really stretch this one out. It has more of a wider base to it, so we're just going to do that here quickly. And so as you can see in the render view, we have a general idea of what these pillows are looking like so far. And so we're looking pretty good so far. So next up, if you see in the reference, there is this vase here that is holding this plant. So we're just going to go into Grayscale Gorilla again. They do have this glassware, and so I'm just going to kind of bring this in just because it's a very similar shape here. And then I'm just going to just kind of increase the size and adjust this to the wall. Kind of line this up to the proper spot here. Cool, so that looks good so far. And then if you see in the reference, this floor does need to widen out a little bit. So I'm just going to grab our floor and just widen it out and bring it back here. Just because you do see some of the floor somewhat going outside. And so I'm just going to try and recreate that by kind of widening this out and bringing this back. Give it a quick save. And then let me see what this looks like with a sky here. And so I'll just take this and then just kind of adjust this here. And really with this, we're just trying to recreate the lighting that's in this piece, But the downside is we're very much kind of stuck with how this Redshift sky is interacting within the scene here. And so we're just going to delete that real quick. I think with bringing some area lights in, that will allow us to control the light a little bit better. So I'm just going to bring in a area light here and move this off to the right side, just because we do get quite a bit of light coming in from the right side of the scene here. Now let me bring in this Redshift sky again and see if we can kind of work with something here. I would like the idea of bringing in a sky here, but if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. So yeah, none of this is really what I'm looking for here. So next up, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste our light here. I'm going to rotate this and bring this back. And essentially for this is going to be the backdrop of our scene here. And so as the reference shows here, there is kind of an outside, more of a tropical sort of a look outside here. And so we're just going to recreate that with this light here. And then next up, I'm going to copy and paste this one, and we're just going to bring this off to the left side of the scene here. And I'm just going to bring down the brightness. And with these lights, we are going to bring in a picture to help kind of recreate that same look that we had on the outside here. And so that's what we'll do with some of this lighting here. And then next up, I'm just going to bring in this other light and bring it a little bit more towards the foreground here. And then just kind of shrink this down and off to the right. Just because in the reference, we do see a lot of shadows working its way past the left side here. And so with bringing in a lot of these lights, we want to make sure to really illuminate the scene like it's supposed to, but we also need that nice contrast as well that is present within the reference. And so ideally we want to represent that properly. So I think kind of moving this over to the right side and kind of shrinking this down a little bit. Because really with the reference, you can kind of see the shadow that is at the foreground here from this wood piece. And so that's a really nice look. So I just want to make sure that we do that right. And then our wood frame is a little too high here. So I'm just going to readjust this here. Actually, it is a little too messy, so I'm just going to turn off a lot of these deformers here just so I can somewhat see what we're doing here. And then I'm just adjusting our pieces on the bed just to make sure that everything is touching the sofa here. And then just bringing down these pillows. Cool. And then I'll move this cylinder kind of to the foreground a little bit more. It is kind of more centered within our piece here, so I'm just going to do that and then bring over this vase to the right a little bit more. Cool. So the general idea of the piece is pretty much set up here, very similar to the reference. So we are looking pretty good so far. It's going to be interesting to see how colors really enhance the scene here, but we'll just kind of see that when we get to it. Actually, I need to kind of readjust this sphere just to make sure that this cable here is somewhat centered onto our lamp here. All right, so jumping into Grayscale Gorilla here, I'm going to go to materials, and then we're just going to kind of shop around for a few different colors here. And then really with this portion, since we don't really know what these are going to look like, we're going to end up bringing in a lot of different colors and textures here, just to see how it interacts within the scene. And we'll bring that in. Don't need fiberglass. Let's see. This could be interesting here for our wall. So we'll bring that in here. This one's a good one. It could be good for our pillows here. And so I'll just bring that in. Same with this one as well. And let's do this one and this one as well. Now, the wood portion is going to be tricky. A lot of these aren't as similar as I would like it to be to a lot of our wood textures here. It is somewhat a little bit more of a warm wood, but more of a unnatural finish here. And so we'll just kind of snag a couple of these just to see what happens here. All right, so next up, I'm hopping into Redshift real quick, see what other colors we have to work with here. And this metal will look pretty nice, especially for some of the edges that we have within the wall, or even just the beams as well too. And so I'll just bring that in just to see how that is looking. And then just kind of scrolling down here. And then what I'll do is just type in bed here, bring in a bed, and hopefully with this we will get this really cool sheet texture here, but we'll kind of see how this is within the piece. And so I just want to see what kind of fabric texture they have. So I'm just going to apply this to the couch, delete the bed here, and then we'll just kind of see how that looks. So I'm just going to apply that to the couch here, and then we'll just kind of see how that acts within our scene. Okay, so next up, I'm going to apply our plaster to the wall, just to kind of give it the same sort of color and texture as well. We're going to apply that metal to the side here, and then apply this to our wood. And already I can tell that this is really not the wood we're looking for here. Let me see this one here. Let me add in some displacement, see if this affects anything. Okay, so that's something we'll have to work on as far as trying to get a displaced, more raw, unnatural wood here. And so I'm just going to kind of play around with some of these wood colors here and see what we can get. And that looks fine for now, so we'll just kind of keep that as a placeholder. Next up, we're going to work on these pillows here, so I'm just going to apply a few of these colors here to try and get something similar to our reference. And yeah, I think we're doing a pretty good job on these pillows as far as the color goes. It's very similar to our reference, so we did a good job kind of picking those out here. So yeah, looking pretty good so far. Next up, I'm just going to apply this to our carpet here. And that was actually the wrong one. Let's do this one here. And that's a little bit more towards our reference. Let me kind of bring this down. Next up, I'll go into Grayscale Gorilla, type in marble here. And really, we're just trying to find a marble that is good for this ground here. And so we'll just kind of look at a few of these. And this one here actually looks pretty good. I think that is actually somewhat spot on to our reference here. And so I'm just going to apply that here. And let's see. Wow, yeah, that's very similar here. Let's crank up the segments and add in some displacement. And then there is this one as well. Yeah, that one not so much. So the original one that we put in was a lot better here, so we'll just rock with that one. And then this one, let's check on this one for the vase. I think that's good. I think now, since the area is a little dark over there because of some of the textures that we put in, the light isn't bouncing off that side as well. And so I think that is the right color. We'll just kind of have to tweak the lighting a little bit more to kind of lighten up that area. So let me look at what they have for bronze here. Just because it has more of a bronze color to it. It is a little bit harder, especially on the left side, just because of some of the shadows that are on this. And so that's a little bit darker. Let's hop into the Redshift library here and see if we can find any more different colors that we can use for our scene here. And really, when it comes to this, it's just a lot of just trial and error. I necessarily don't know what it's going to look like as far as what some of these colors are going to look like when we throw them into some of these models here. And so again, it's really nice just to bring in a few different colors, see how it interacts within the scene, and then kind of adjusting on the fly. So all right, so I'm going to try and bring in this wood here. We're going to try and get somewhat of a better wood. Now that's a dark wood, but it's still pretty flat here. And then next up, what I'm going to do is just bring in a displacer for our sofa here. And then I'm just trying to bring in a few different noises to see what this may look like. This mattress is somewhat a little bit more dense in the middle, and then kind of is reduced down off to both the left and the right side here. And so I'm just trying to kind of recreate that slight increase in size in the middle here. I think around -2 is somewhat similar. It's not as uniform as we had it, and so that's good for now. Let's bounce over to these beams here. And so I have this aluminum color here, and we're just going to apply that to these beams here. And that's looking pretty good to the reference. I know the reference does have somewhat of a reflection when it comes to some of these beams, but we'll kind of play around with the lighting here shortly. Okay, so actually let me go into this area light here, and I'm just going to kind of play with the intensity. If you look at the reference, we do have some light that's coming in somewhat in the foreground, kind of working its way towards this vase here. And so I'm just trying to kind of recreate that same look, but also keep a lot of the strong shadows that we get on the left side of this piece here. So And that's a little bit better when it comes to the light. We still have to kind of tweak that a little bit more, but I'll just kind of bounce around the scene here depending on what I'm really looking at here. But this wood is definitely throwing me off quite a bit. Let me see if I can snag a few other options when it comes to wood here. I know Grayscale Gorilla has a lot of unnatural wood, but it's just not exactly what we're looking at. Yeah, and this is just kind of more of the same thing. It is a bit of a warmer brown, so we did get somewhat closer, but we might just have to kind of play around with that as we go. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a picture into our light here. So I will be right back. All right, so this is what I found so far. Somewhat similar to our reference where it has a lot of vegetation and you can see the sky. I'm thinking we might kind of change this a little bit just because it's good, but it's not the best option we can do here. But we'll just kind of leave that as is as a placeholder, and then we'll go back in and adjust this. Next up, what we need to do is we need to make a lot of different wood pieces that is essentially on the bottom of the roof here. And so I'm just going to bring in a cylinder and then really adjust it to this ceiling here. And then I'm going to bring in a matrix, go down to linear, and with this I'm just trying to adjust the spacing for a lot of these different wood pieces. And so I'm just seeing what this looks like here, and then I'm just going to increase the count, go over to custom objects, throw in our cylinder, and then somewhat adjust it here. And so you can kind of see in the render view what this is looking like. And then I'll throw in this wood here. And so we're getting somewhat of a similar look to our reference. Let me scoot this down a little bit and just kind of adjust this here. And then really what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it fit, but at the same time adjust it so it's not poking out of our wall here. And then I'm just going to kind of decrease the count a little bit. Now I'm going to copy and paste our Redshift matrix, and then I'm just going to move this off slightly and then just kind of adjust it to the ceiling here, just to kind of create a little bit more variety and texture. Really, I'm just trying to line it up where it looks a little realistic here, and also exactly what we have within our reference here. So that is looking pretty good. What I'll do is actually turn off the roof here just to see what that looks like. And yeah, that looks pretty good for what we have going on here. I'm just going to turn off the matrix in our viewport. And then we do have our metal piece here, so I'm just going to adjust it to our matrix. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Just kind of peeking over at the reference here. Cool. So we are missing some warmness to the piece. It is a little bit more warm, and so we'll have to adjust that here. But so far we're doing a pretty good job at this. We'll just kind of continue on here. But next up, what I'm going to do is just hop into Quixel Bridge real quick, grab somewhat of a similar plant to our reference here. I found these. These were probably the closest ones I found that is in Quixel Bridge here to our reference. And let's pull in this one. This one looks a little bit more dynamic here. And then I'm just going to kind of shrink this down, bring this over, and kind of adjust it to this left side here. Just going to rotate that a bit and then just scale it down, and then just kind of look around, make sure that it is center here. Let me pull up the Redshift render view, see what this looks like. Go in, turn off luminance, and then we'll hop into our perspective here. Give it a quick save. That looks quite similar. Let me just adjust the scale a little bit. And then I'm just going to kind of rotate this, bring this down a little bit. And so even though it's not technically the same plants, I'm just going to kind of try to recreate that same shape or just the same sort of look here. Cool, so this is coming along. Let me adjust this background here and just kind of play around with this. So this one definitely needs some work, so let's try and find something a little bit different for that one at some point here. Let me just adjust my camera. I feel like we're a little bit too zoomed in. I'm just going to kind of move this to the left slightly. And then same thing with this piece here, kind of move this over. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste this, shrink this down, and kind of make this kind of the foreground piece here. So let me bring in a sphere here. I'm going to throw in a bulge, and hopefully with this we can kind of get more of an interesting look here. It's kind of rounded off on the top portion here, and so I'm just playing around with this to kind of get that same rounded look. And then what we'll do is we'll probably just create a bool to kind of recreate this shape here. So I'm just going to bring in a cube, shrink this down, and then I'm going to bring in a bool, and then just bring this over and down. And so that kind of helps me recreate that same sort of shape here. And this is kind of a little bit farther down here, so I'm just going to grab these and bring this down. That is a little bit better. We'll just kind of continue tweaking this a little bit. And then let me just try to get the scaling right. And then bring this down a bit more. And then kind of move this off to the left side. And then really adjust this trunk piece here. So let me actually bring in a light. We can't really see a lot of what's going on, so I'm just going to bring in a light here, and then I'm just going to throw in kind of a warmer color here, just because that's what this piece was kind of missing to make it be a little bit more lively here. And so I'm just going to adjust the size, rotate this, play around with how this is looking here. And let me just decrease the intensity here, kind of bring this up. Maybe this light will be kind of helping out the sofa area here, but at the same time, we're still kind of missing the foreground here. So I'll just kind of tweak this a little bit. And what's tricky about this is we really can't lose the shadows when it comes to the shadows on the left side. So I really have to play with this. But at the same time, with this area light, you do see the reflection of the window in the area lights. So actually what I might do is just turn off that window completely so we don't get the reflection, so we can kind of be a little bit more flexible when it comes to this lighting here. And really I'm just kind of playing around with it and seeing what our render view kind of shows with this. Okay, so next up, what I need to do is one of these pillows here is just kind of bright white here, and so I'm just going to hop into Grayscale Gorilla and bring in this texture here, and then hopefully we can find something that is a little bit better. Maybe this one here might be a little bit to our reference here. Not that one, but that one looks a little bit better here. And so yeah, that looks pretty good. And then off camera as well, what I decided to do was kind of play around with this mattress a little bit more. As you can see, it's slowly going downhill and not looking as complete as I want it to be, but I'll just kind of leave that there for now. Next up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a few different pictures here for kind of our background here, and hopefully by doing that it can kind of tie the piece together a little bit more. So let me do that real quick and I'll see you back here. All right, so this is what I found so far. So I found these two pieces here, and so what I actually did was I used the same image for both sides. I just kind of adjusted the image to be somewhat the same, because essentially it's the same image here, but we're just adjusting the scale. So on this left side here, I have it a little bit more kind of concentrated, which is similar to the reference here. We really can't see a lot that's going on, but we can see the vegetation here. And then I did change the backside that we had originally and just kind of change that perspective. So we just kind of adjusted the perspective and kind of skewed it a little bit, so we get somewhat of a cohesive background here without having to really piece these together separately. So now let me take out this displacer just because that's a little annoying there. And now I'm just going to really adjust these pillows and make sure that this is sitting on the sofa properly. Now I'm going to throw in some wood into our pieces in the foreground here. And so again, we're not really getting that raw natural look, but we'll just kind of apply that there and see what we can do with it. But next up, what I'll do is I'll actually do the same process for our background here. I'm going to find some sort of painting piece for our painting here, and so I'll just be right back with that. Cool, so I think I found a good one here. I'll bring up the Redshift render view here, press play, hop into perspective. And then this is what it looks like. So what I was able to do is I found a somewhat of a similar piece as far as the painting here goes, just because it's rather old, but I wanted to keep with the same tone as far as the beige goes. And then did find a new color for this as well while I was looking around for this painting. And then I did find this interesting texturized wood, and I've placed this at the bottom of our sofa here, so we get a lot more of that natural look of our wood here. So I'm liking that a lot more now. And then what I did was I actually threw in a spotlight here to kind of highlight the bed a little bit more. I brought in more of that warm tone to kind of really bring a little bit more life into the piece here. So I'm trying to kind of really get the lighting right here, both on the bed and the foreground, while again still maintaining some of our shadows on the left side here. So what I'll do is, since we are getting somewhat closer to rendering, I'm going to go over and change our size here. I'm gonna hop into the Redshift camera and really just kind of adjust our scene here. And really, I'm just trying to get the perspective correct here. And then bring down this carpet here. Same with this. And then our other piece as well too. So, and then with this, I'm just trying to do the final touches here to this piece to make sure that this is what we're going to submit essentially. But I think we're getting to the spot where we are going to render this out and kind of see how this is as far as our renders go. And so also what is nice is in post, we can also kind of adjust how this looks as well, as far as like the lighting and everything goes. And so this is kind of a raw look now, and then we will hop into our wrap-up portion and kind of go over our renders and how we felt like we did this go round. So let's hop up into the wrap-up section and get this going. All right, so hopping into our wrap-up section, this is the render I ended up with at the end of the day. The biggest opportunity I will say with this is, if you look at some of our wood here at the bottom of the couch, it is a little too grainy and pixelated here. It did come out rather rough. And then I did manage to see that the background here, as far as our pictures go, is a little blown out. There's a lot of different highlights here as well. And then you could kind of see in the top left corner here, we really didn't get that correct here as far as lining up this picture here. I will say we did get the general essence of the image here, but it is very, it still needs a lot of work. There's not a lot of texture when it comes to the sofa here, and it's still very 3D. You can really tell that this is a 3D image and not an actual picture here. And so when we line this up to our picture and to our render here, it's just a night and day difference as far as the textures and the quality goes here. And so this was definitely a good start here, but not what we were looking for too much. What I was trying to avoid is like being able to add detail but still have my machine render it at the end of the day. And so, but I'm sure with going back into this piece, if we just kind of tone down this background here to somewhat of a darker color, and then we kind of tweak the lighting a little bit more here, that will kind of bring in a little bit more realism. We can always kind of retouch the bottom of this wood here, and then same thing as with the wall. The wall has a little bit too much graininess to it as well from the plaster. And so this was my first render from it. I did do another render, but it just didn't come out as well. But essentially that's kind of the name of the game when it comes to this series, is essentially just kind of get one shot here. I will throw in another render just in case, but that's pretty much it, because I just wanted to see how this is. Of course, this can definitely not be the finished piece. Like I said, we can see a lot of our opportunities here. You can try to find out how to throw in a little bit more detail and still being able to kind of render this out at the end of the day. But this was essentially our first shot at doing it here. Let me know what you guys think. My goal is to kind of do a few of these episodes here throughout the next coming weeks. And so we'll try to do a few different living spaces, and then we'll hop into a few other options as well. Other than that, that was pretty much it for today. This was our first shot at this render here. Like I said, we have a lot of really positive things from here as far as getting our perspective and just the overall concept, but we do need to kind of hone this in a little bit more. But that's all part of the learning process. That's what's really cool about a lot of this, is you can kind of get a general idea of what the render is going to look like, but sometimes rendering it out and even showing it on a few different monitors, or even on the phone, the tone and even the color is going to look a little bit different depending on the brightness here. But this is what we got out of here. That wraps up episode 1 here. Had a lot of fun doing this, but other than that, that's pretty much the end of it today. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.